Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. You looked for it and you found it. The podcast where we dive into the deepest, darkest, murkiest waters with a plethora of legendary guests. And who better to interview the most legendary, coolest guest than the hottest legend himself, Rex Triple X Ruger. That's right, you got him in the flesh. A.K.A. the King of Sleaze, A.K.A. the Hair Metal High Priest, A.K.A. the man with the golden voice and the velvet tongue, and most importantly, A.K.A. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. Look at him. Look at us, father and son, ruling the universe. That's right. And I'm looking and seeing that my guest for today is ready, so I will not go into my usual diatribe about all my various bands and how busy I am in the show business world. But of course, I am coming to you, as always, from the Pink Pussycat Lounge, the Den of Sin. And take one look, folks. You know that I am the son of glam, the front man for the band. Got 1 million fans. Just smoked a few grams. Always going out with a bang. Mr. Wop, Babadoo, Bop, Wop, Bang, Bang, Hot Damn, Shazam. And we got a good one for you tonight. Or today, depending on where you are in the world. Of course, I am the hardest working man in show business, bringing you the podcast that has no frills, because you're looking at the thrills, baby. Chip off the old block back there, huh? As you can see. So we got a good guest for you today, a very good guest, a guy that I am very excited about having in here. Today, it's going to be a little something different. Usually, I'm either used to having people in there that like to punch other people in the face, either with their fist or their music. But today, we're getting somebody a little bit different. Still in the arts field, but a little switcheroony for Pod Scum here. Oh, there he is. There's a face I love right there, man. That's a face that I love right there. John Pollono, man, I'm finally glad we finally got to make this happen, man. You know what? I kind of figured, you being the big Hollywood star that you are now, that I would have to wait a little bit. But, you also kept me waiting. And as you can see, I have a picture of my father right here behind me.
There you go.
I think I deserve a little bit of, I'm a legend too,
No, man, I can clearly see that. Plain as
Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. Does that carry any weight with you?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Maybe definitely one of the top 2 Van Halen lead singers of all time.
And are you saying that can I at least read between the lines? You're at least saying, though, that if we ranked them, it would be Roth, Hagar, and then Gary Sharon?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably what I'd put it at. Although I do think some of the Sammy Hagar albums are pretty good, but okay. Vintage David Lee Roth, I just think you just can't touch.
I mean, the best. John Pollono, you've had reoccurring roles on what's the NBC show? This Is Us?
Yes, This Is Us.
And you have a reoccurring role on a TNT show too, right? It's in here in my notes somewhere. Mob City?
Yeah, that was kind of a robust recurring. It was almost like a series regular, but it only ran 6 episodes, unfortunately.
But what really put you on my radar was this Small Engine Repair. Now, I think I reached out to you like the next day after I saw this movie. Here's what happened to me. I ended up watching it, and I was watching it on my phone, and then I ended up just walking in circles in my kitchen, going to get a midnight snack. Then I ended up standing in one place for the longest time watching it, and it really hit me, opened up an emotional floodgate from me being a father and a grandfather. Now, I don't want to spoil it for people that haven't seen it, and because I certainly would implore anybody to go out and see it. But what was your impetus for making a movie like that, though? Because obviously, to touch on some of the themes, there's, certainly themes of cyberbullying, which is very big nowadays. But what was the impetus for it? Started out as a play, right? You wrote it as a play initially?
100%. So, I started out as a playwright, and I wrote this play about 10 years ago, and it was a late night play, part of the late night show where you did kind of edgier stuff that could have pretty basic production values, meaning lights up, there's a scene, you had to use there was a play called Sunset Limited by Cormac McCarthy.
Oh, yes.
Great play right before us. So they had a scene which was like a dilapidated apartment. Lights up, they had their whole play there. So I kind of had to build off of the bones of that. And I just had these ideas. So it really was, I mean, at this point I'd been doing plays for quite a while, but it was just a couple of ideas clicked, and doing it late night, you got sort of a rowdier crowd. And you kind of push the envelope a little more. So I allowed that to have a sort of morality tale that was sort of unfiltered in the way guys talk, especially guys like, you know, where I was familiar with.
Yeah.
And creating these composite characters and just kind of letting them go based off of stuff that I loved in theater, like, you know, Mamet and, you know, Sarah Kane and LaBute, some of these more envelope, Martin McDonough, obviously a huge influence, some of these more envelope pushing things.
Yep.
And, you know, being a dad, obviously you stuff in a lot of the emotions that you have. My daughter was, I guess, about 5 at that time.
Yeah.
And she was when we did the first play, we used her photograph as the banner, you know, as the small engine repair shop. So her photo and the Crystal character is like watching over the play the whole time. So
right.
And then we used that same photo when it went off to Broadway to New York and stuff. So, you know, man, it was really kind of one of those beautiful creative moments where it was like, you know, I had 2 jobs during the day, so I had to do the late night thing. My wife produced it, a friend directed it. We found John Bernthal on a reading, and we did it for like no money. A lot of times when you do stuff for less money, you're able to take more artistic chances.
Absolutely. Now you're out in Hollywood now, but you're originally an East Coast guy, because I'm in upstate New York, but, you know, I can certainly sniff out my own, and I can tell definitely that I'm looking at an East Coast guy, and I could tell in that movie too. I mean, I believe you said it in New Hampshire. Is that originally where you're from? Yeah. You're a New Hampshire guy.
Correct.
And what's the hardest part about being out in Hollywood? Can you find a lot of the things that you loved back on the East Coast out there? Have you managed to track down, like, say, good pizza?
Well, pizza is a big challenge. I mean, you know, I go to New York or Boston and you just turn a random corner and order a slice and it's better than. There's a couple places. I got a buddy of mine, a former pro boxer named Steve Petramali, has Petramali Pizza, and it's like he has an oven built into his truck and he travels around, and it's as good as anything you could find on the East Coast. But short of that, it's a bit of a challenge unless you get straight cheese.
So now that you're out in LA, I just want to know, is there now a mandatory law out there that says John Bernthal must appear in everything? Because that guy's got to be the hardest working guy in show business. It seems like every project now I'm seeing John Bernthal's face.
Yeah, he's the guy's tireless. He works a lot and he adores his family. So every time he shoots something, it breaks his heart to be away. So he's not one of those guys like, I just got to get the fuck out of my house. But no, I mean, when he did the play, he was in some legal trouble and he couldn't leave the city of Los Angeles. So he's like, what am I going to do? The play kind of fell on his lap and he did that. So we got lucky. And it was really sort of before he took off in a huge way. But
Well, you know, and as I said earlier, not to give too much away, but you're choosing 2 people to kind of be, you know, somewhat play like blue collar friend roles in this. Were John Bernthal and Shea Wiggum, who did a magnificent job, were those your first 2 choices? Because they certainly are able to portray that the everyman characters that they were supposed to be playing.
So John was in sorry to back up. John was in the original production 10 years ago. So he did it when there was no money. And we're changing in the hallways. Yep. And in a couple of nights, we did like substance specific shows. I mean, it was super experimental, like late night, you know, shit that the old school, you know, our heroes did. So he was in it from the beginning, and then the character, you know, I rewrote as we did it, became more and more about like his input on it. And then Shay, I mean, the Packy character is incredibly difficult to cast. You needed to write physicality and just a killer actor. And I mean, I'd always been a big fan of Shay, but I was like, I don't know, can he pull off that sort of beta male, small stature? And John, who had worked with him, is like, dude, the guy's like insane and he's funny. And he's so imposing on screen. You don't realize he's not that big of a guy.
Right.
So it really worked. And he just brought it, man. I mean, the 2 of them, like you couldn't ask for better actors.
Well, the thing that I love,
$200 million, I wouldn't have found better actors than that.
Right. The thing that I love the most, is how you thread it in there. And I don't think this gives away too much of the plot. So, hopefully you don't mind me saying, but some of the dialogue in there was just great, because I was describing it to a friend of mine who I was imploring to watch it. And I was just telling him that I was going to have you on. And I don't know if I accurately described it, but I did say a slow burn type. You really got to stay with you guys talking and hanging out as friends or whatever until shit really starts to unravel and really starts to kick into high gear. But the dialogue is what I love the most. And especially, like, I love the Bill Buckner, Mookie Wilson story, because that meant a lot to me as a kid, because Mookie was number one, my favorite player. And I'm a huge Mets fan. That was a big moment for me as a 13-year, I'm 49 now, as a 13-year-old kid. That was, the biggest moment in my life up to that point. So I loved hearing that story threaded in there.
Yeah, that was, it was just such an epic moment in my childhood too, that I put it in the play.
Yeah.
And then it just worked. And obviously the character, when I had done the play, the characters were, 10 years younger. It was more like Frank had a baby his senior year in high school. And because when I did the play originally, I was like in my early 30s. Right. And then, for the movie, we just aged it up and it worked. Nonetheless, that was still such a seminal moment in like your life, you know what I mean? And everything that it was. And, the play, the world of the play and the movie too, really is about so much tapping into that guys of our generation to some extent who grew up without this ubiquitous technology. Right. And now we see it. So we're nostalgic for the past, but wasn't necessarily better or worse. It's just simpler, perhaps.
Right. But when you say it was a big moment to you, from which side are you attacking it from? Were you
a Red Sox?
You were a Red Sox guy or a Mets guy?
Yeah, I mean Red Sox. I grew up in New England. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I grew up about 35 minutes north of Boston. So it was.
So was there ever any deep-rooted hatred for Bill Buckner from you?
I mean, I was so young when it happened. I remember being pissed at him. And I remember watching it with my buddies at one point, and our dads would, they weren't that vicious, but they would get mad at you. Just have to leave for a little bit. Yeah. And then you just watch it in the basement. We were watching in my basement. I remember that memory. And then we all kind of like snuck out, because then if you did something stupid, it definitely went from like to DEFCON 4 like that. Cause they're
right. Yeah.
I don't know if they had money on the game or whatever, but it was like, the New England teams growing up lost. Other than the Celtics, they always lost. Yes. Still being a Mets fan, you know what I mean? Since but so you hang so much of your hometown pride on it. And that was the thing I realized about sports and tried to capture to some extent. The dark side of that is like so many guys, we don't know how to express our emotion. But if we're watching a sporting event, we have that shared excitement and love. Right. It's like, I love you, but let's put it on the TV. So we're not like, we're allowed to do it. Let's put it on the game. Right. It's like you'll think when your mother dies that you got to stand there and be so stoic at her funeral, but then you'll cry when your team loses the Super Bowl, or your favorite boxer gets knocked out. And the movie's very much about exploring those and just doing it in an honest way, not really judging it one way or the other, but talking about that somewhat difficult tightrope to walk when you're told these are the acceptable ways of dealing with things. Right. Well, it's very tough because I just want to glow over the whole movie. But then for people that haven't seen it, I don't want to go on and on and on about it and ruin it for people. But you as a parent, though, when you look back on it or the themes that are brought up in it, and you had mentioned that you had children. I have 2 daughters and now I have granddaughters myself. What kind of emotions does it conjure up in you? And what kind of emotions when you're writing this thing, do you think it's going to conjure up, or that you're hoping it'll conjure up inside of people? Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. So to me, it was like, and I also have 3 sisters. So I feel like my just sort of entry into this was always the code switching of the 2 worlds, of having women I loved as sisters, girlfriends, mom, and then daughter, having these women that had my heart, but then at the same time being in that masculine world, which can be really, really fucked up. Yes. And you can't exist in that world to some extent if you're soft. You can't exist in that world if you're not paying the commodity of hey, I fucked this chick, I did all that stuff. Right. It's tricky. So how do you do that and then go back to see the other side? So like, how do you hear a guy talk about how he like hooked up with a girl and banged her and left her the next morning, and then you go home to the women you love and you hear them how a guy broke their heart doing that? So right. Very much out of the mold of that, creating a story that dealt with a lot of, I felt, feminist issues, but from a really brutally raw, honest, masculine way that I felt would appeal to, first of all, women always loved the play and the movie in a ways more than men, because they're like, they see through our bullshit.
Right.
And then men were like, oh, you're not trying to like, virtue signal. You're just saying like, this is how it is, which great theater did to me. And I tried to do that at the movie, is like, come, man, talk about it afterwards. Come to your own conclusion. Create really ambiguous situations.
Right. Well, that's what I loved about it the most, because when I was standing there in the kitchen, it was really making me think. And again, not to give too much away, but I started to think that the things that you're asking of your friends in that movie, I'm starting to really rack my brain and think, who the fuck would do this for me? I don't think any of my friends, not to get into too much. I mean, so I guess maybe we're talking in semantics and maybe people won't know what the hell we're talking about. But what you do ask of your friends in this movie to do, though, to engage in any kind of, violent acts, in order to better serve, what you're trying to accomplish, though, that's a hard thing in and of itself.
Oh, 100%. I mean, really, it was to sort of take a really gritty, brutally honest deep dive on the sort of revenge scenario that as men is always so, simplified.
Right.
And to show how much more complicated it is. And to your point, what you ask of people and all that stuff. Like every guy is like, oh, if that happened to someone I loved, I would do this in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
well,
I got their back.
what that is.
Yeah.
And the truth being is that for these guys, especially, it's like you're conditioned to think that way. But really what the situation called for was something different. And anyway, it's just, again, to me, the history of theater being, my favorite plays were ones like the lights went up and I was like, holy shit. Yeah. I have to really think about this.
Yeah.
And I'm not, at least with this, I'm not really always interested in art that makes me feel better about myself and regurgitates my belief system. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like politically or otherwise, like we're so divided. We're in all these echo chambers, but like good art to me, it's like scalds you. It's a little dangerous.
Yes, absolutely.
And it makes you think and like engage, and you may not know the answer, but it'll linger with you. And really some of those plays that I saw where I was like scalded by, that's what was in the design of this one. And then the movie, for better or for worse, didn't really continue that tradition and made something that some people see it and they're horribly offended. Some people say, no, you're offended because you didn't get it. This is what it is. And they personalize it. And I was like, well, that's perfect.
Well, I must admit that my wife at first didn't like where it was going when I showed it to her, because she thought it was just going to end in just more of like a pulp grit type violence. Sure. And for those who haven't seen it, it certainly did. The person that we wanted to see get taught a lesson in the movie gets taught one in a very unorthodox and what I found to be a very funny way. But we'll leave that up to the viewer. But how did you get into actually, like, how do you get this movie made? You say you start this as a play. Now, obviously, making a career right now in the arts, and I talk to a lot of musicians on here usually. So, obviously it's very feast or famine these days with how the music industry has changed. But when you write a play like that, how do you go, or where do you go, for people that don't know out there, to get this turned into a movie?
I mean, look, man, there's no clear path. For me, it was, I'm a working screenwriter, and I was a playwright and a screenwriter, and doing that to continue, that's my job. And then, I had a piece of material that was very battle worn. Like the play was massively successful. It's been done all over the world. So in terms of, getting investors interested, here's your proof of concept. So I had a screenplay that was an adaptation. The movie is very contained.
Yes.
So you do it, again, to our point earlier, like the play, you do it for as little as you can.
Low budget.
Make it look as good as it can. I mean, you could have made that movie you get Brad Pitt in it. It's $25-30 million movie.
I know.
Bernthal's a producer. He's one of my best friends. So we did it as like as a piece of art, as an independent film. And we just kept it as low budget as possible. Everyone who worked on it for scale. I mean, look, Shay's in every movie too, but Shay gets a piece of material like this, and he's like, wow, I can flex my muscles. I can do a master class. And all the actors and stuff in the movie were people who were primarily theater trained and like excited to sink their teeth into it. Right. It wasn't their paycheck job. Right. So you keep it simple, you keep it low, you find the money, and then, where there's a will, there's a way. I started with the script, and it was John and I. John's obviously a very, famous actor, and he helps legitimize things. And then we just raised the money and put it together. And like, the more passionate you are about something, you pull people towards that. And I mean, look, man, up until the day we started submitting it to festivals, it was a dream. And then we obviously got screwed really bad by COVID and
right. Yeah.
in terms of the release of the film. But, you know, it is what it is. But other than that, it was like, build it and they will come. Create something out of passion and heart.
Right. Right.
But I would always say temper your delusions of grandeur.
Yeah.
Especially for your first film. And I mean, I had directed theater and shorts, but never done a feature. So I kept it to the material I knew with people I know and love. And I stacked the deck in my favor and kept it again is tightly budgeted as possible to be able to maintain my vision. If I went higher, I would have had to change some things, some moral ambiguity. And I say this as a screenwriter. I mean, I got to do that all the time for
right. So when you do a project like that, and of course, obviously, you know, people I think view going out to Hollywood or being an actor is, you know, you want the big trade off, being part of the big, as you said earlier, the big blockbuster or the Marvel movies or all that kind of stuff. But when you do something small like this, and you get people who are really invested in the project and really dialed in, and as you said, like Shay giving a master class or whatever, is that inspiring to you when you see people that just really get on board and want to be involved in a project and they know and you know that the payout is not going to be substantial?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all start when we're artists. We all start on it. Like the people I know who want to be famous and make a lot of money don't usually.
Right.
The people you find a way to parlay your talent into making money and sustain it. I think having a career in the arts is a marathon.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you can't like not a sprint. It is. You gotta figure it out.
Sure.
And dude, I worked in theater losing money, hemorrhaging money for you know, a dozen years until I had a hit. And then as soon as I started to have a career as a screenwriter, all of those lessons I learned working 2 or 3 jobs and bringing my wife's an actress producer, bringing our daughter, putting her in a, you know, bassinet on the stage while we rehearsed, like all eating, you know, all of those tough times. And you look back at it nostalgic, but when you're working something and you don't see an end in sight, you just do it for the work and you do it for the moment. And those moments on stage, and you're a musician, so you know that's like when you're on the stage and you're connecting with an audience and your truth is flowing through each other. It sounds corny, but like nothing's better than that.
Right.
There's nothing better. You know, you may go in the studio and record shit. You may go on a tour. You may go on a talk show, whatever. Stuff's cool, great. Nothing compares to those pure moments.
Right.
And you, in making a movie, you try to replicate those moments as much as you can and find that moment, but it's just a different thing once you add all that business and stuff into it.
Right. So a current project that I'm reading that you're working on is writing a screenplay, a biopic on the life of Hulk Hogan. Am I reading this correctly? And you were writing this, and this will be directed by Todd Phillips.
Yeah. So I'm writing it with Scott Silver, who's one of the greatest screenwriters of all time. And
of course, Todd Phillips, the Joker, the Hangover movies. You know,
he did all that. And Scott and Todd co-wrote the Joker movies and stuff too. So it's an incredible team. So yeah, we've been working on that for a long, long time. I mean, look, honestly, I think it'll happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to do Super first.
And so exactly, since you're the one writing this, I can ask you how much of this, or I should say, how much of Hulk Hogan's life will be covered in this? Like, will we see, will it focus just on wrestling? Or obviously Hulk's been, you know, widely publicized for having a lot of turmoil as far as his son getting into a car accident and disabling somebody else. He had a pretty nasty divorce. You know, he's had some certainly hairy moments in his life. How much of the Hulk's life do we get?
Man, I'll tell you, I'm not at liberty to tell you specifics, but what I'll say is you couldn't do justice to the entire Hulk Hogan story in a 2.5 hour movie. You have to take a piece of his life that's emblematic of the bigger story, and I think we did that. But you know, it's not. I don't. You know, you can't cover. I mean, nothing can cover every little nook and cranny. But I think people who like wrestling and like Hulk, you know,
Hulk's had a very long, illustrious career. Now, here's the $1 million question: will John Bernthal be in this Hulk Hogan movie in any way, shape, or form? Will he be playing Vince McMahon?
It's too early to say, but he has my vote.
He has your vote to play Vince McMahon, or
dude, if I was directing it, he would play Vince McMahon. I'll say
he would play Vince McMahon. Okay.
But
so
I'm not direct. I mean, we're a long ways away from that, but I mean,
so we're not casting yet. Okay, so we haven't started any casting yet. So there's still maybe time for me to play Shawn Michaels or maybe Ric Flair or somebody along those lines.
I would just say just start doing push-ups. You're probably about a year to get before they start casting. And I'm just joking. I have no
Okay,
idea.
that's good to know. That's good to know. Well, because listen, man, I certainly want to parlay. I would certainly want to segue into the next phase of my career. I would love that to be acting. I mean, hey, put me in a John Pollono movie. I want to be strapped to the rocket because I think it's about to take off.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm working on the next one. So yeah.
So I will be in the next one. I just want my SAG card. I just want to be able to brag about a SAG card. That's
where do you? What part of upstate are you in?
I am literally. Probably the biggest city that I'm close to is Syracuse.
I know upstate very well. I mean, I used to hang out in Ithaca and Catskills and stuff like that. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. Harsh winters, and I'm sure you experience a lot of that in New Hampshire as well. How about this? How about if I maybe trim the hair up a little bit and maybe I can play Linda Hogan?
Hey man, you know, they can do some amazing things with that, like AI face replacement thing. You never know.
So let me ask you this about other future projects. Is there anything else in the works, or are you the kind of guy when you work on something, and I don't think you're this type of guy, but when you work on something, it's got your undivided attention, or are you kind of working on multiple projects at the same time?
I mean, I think certain projects at a certain time require all of your attention, but
right.
You know, when you do what I do, a lot of times is you write a draft and you turn it into the studio, and you may not get notes, and you may not rewrite it for 3 or 4 months. And in the meantime, you work on something else. And then if something's going to get made in a month, then you put everything else on hold and you go do it. So, I mean, I'm juggling a bunch of like really, really cool things that I'm at a point in my career now where I'm fortunate enough to usually just work on stuff I love.
Yeah.
To get paid to do. You know, it took me a long time to get there, but that's where I'm at. And, you know, you work on each one of them and you put your heart into it. And then you never know when the planets align and you can make it. I mean, Small Engine Repair I did independently, so I didn't have to wait for anybody. And I have something, I might end up doing that, or I might do a studio thing. I don't know. Just see how it goes.
Now, I had not seen the Small Engine Repair play, but how much, when it gets parlayed into a movie, how much of it stays true to what it actually is as far as the dialogue and all that stuff? Do they match up identically, or do you take more liberties with a movie or less liberties?
Sure. So, a play, especially this one's like a master scene. There's no cuts. So you have a lot of segue dialogue. You chew the fat a lot more in a play.
Right.
It's a verbal medium, and
sure,
you can enjoy the banter. In a theater, it's like a well-tuned. It's like playing a studio, a song. You got to play it the same way every night.
Right.
And then within reason of little embellishments. Whereas a movie, requires I found it interesting. The movie is darker than the play. The movie is more grounded and more serious.
Okay.
The humor is more thrown away in the movie.
Okay.
In the play, there's a comedy on stage is a very technical aspect to it in terms of sending it to an audience, making them hear it, holding for a laugh, the timing of it. It's more of a music. And in the movie, so many of the fucking best lines in the play and the movie just thrown away.
Yeah.
You don't even notice them. But that was a conscious directorial decision. Some of my favorite movies, like Goodfellas or something. First time you watch Goodfellas, you're like, holy shit, that was terrifying. Then you watch it again and you're like, oh my God, it's a fucking comedy. This is hilarious.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah.
And then the third time you see it and you're like, oh, it's a tragedy. It's all these things. So I really wanted to create something that upon multiple views, I certainly think if you see Small Engine Repair a second time, you see how the breadcrumbs were laid out in plain sight, and you'll get a lot more of the, Hitchcockian thematics to it. And probably a lot more of the humor that, again, is thrown away. Whereas on the play, you stop, you plant, and you say a line that's a zinger, and people are like, oh, my God, I can't believe you said that.
Right.
And 2 of my favorite lines are just thrown away. And you really, unless you really pay attention, you don't even hear them. But that's fine. That's how real life is.
So what part do you like being on? Like, do you like being at your laptop writing? Do you like being behind the camera? Because you obviously had a very prominent role in the film adaptation of Small Engine Repair. Do you like being an on-camera personality, or are you more comfortable in a behind-the-scenes role?
I mean, I think the way my lifestyle is and the way my brain is wired, I consider myself primarily like a writer.
Yeah.
Although a writer-director felt very comfortably. I love acting. I think I'm really good at it. Yes. I'm not great at auditioning, mostly because my slate is so full. And I'm so dialed into the projects I'm writing that when I get, most of the stuff I get is like guest star on this kind of thing. And you're like, it takes to do it right. You needed like a solid day or so to really cram for it and prepare for it.
Right.
So like if people just offer me and give me the job, I show up. I mean, nothing more I'd love to do with work great directors and I'll give my all and I will deliver the fuck out of it.
Yes.
But getting the job, is really, really hard for me to hit pause on
right.
the shit I created. And like Small Engine Repair is like, look, I wrote myself the role. I'm doing it. I didn't have to audition, and I killed it. I mean, had a wonderful time doing it. But like, I don't know what the hoops I'd have to jump through in order to get cast in something because I'm not like a celebrity. You know what I mean?
So what you're saying to up and coming directors is write yourself into your own movies and you'll never have to audition.
Yeah, well, I mean, if that's what you want to do, and like, look, a lot of guys. You look at somebody like Billy Bob Thornton, and a lot of people, or you know, like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. A lot of them, it's like, look, they wrote themselves these roles, and then they pursued the acting thing, and I mean, I started a little bit later. Like, I made my movie that I starred in, and you know, I was in my 40s. It's like maybe if I was 28, I could have been like solely focused on that. But to me, it's yeah, I just have too much going on, I think.
But do you have any actual? I mean, you know, I saw that you did attend college, but do you have any actual acting experience, or are you a trained actor?
Yeah, I mean, after I moved out here, I went to an acting conservatory for several years.
Okay.
Which is like, you know, you start at the basics, but you work your way up to scene study class and I was in the master class. That's where I met my wife.
Okay.
Some of my greatest friends.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's kind of like working out at the gym, you know, if you're working in a play or you're on a movie or a TV show, you're working out, but then a lot of the downtime, you just continue to do, you know, just do scene work and stuff with people and stay sharp.
And so what was it about? Or what is it about John Bernthal and Shea Wiggum that you think works best in this movie as far as them playing your two friends? Because I'll tell you what, the greatest thing about this movie was the fact that I literally felt throughout the whole thing, and this is what I think great movies do. You know, I feel like it's almost like watching like a documentary or like watching through the lens of these three guys just hanging out for the night. And obviously we've seen John Bernthal in The Walking Dead. We've seen him in Marvel movies. You know, we've certainly seen he has a very wide range. And I know you said you have a history with him and go back with him a long time as a friend. But, you know, what do you see in those two guys, you know, that makes them ideal for this role? Maybe even speaking more to even like, you know, Shea specifically.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's very simple to me, although it's sort of a technical thing unless you kind of are in the weeds with it. But there are actors who are great soloists and they perform their role on camera. And then there are actors who are great listeners and they're selfless and they send and receive. And that's where these guys are like, you could not ask for better actors. And, you know, if the cameras, so there are actors that only act when the camera's on them. And if the camera's on you and you got to give them off-screen lines, they phone it in, or they have the AD do it. These guys had better performance, as good as, if not better performances, when the camera was on someone else. We were all always there, lifting each other up, and that's just my favorite type of acting. Actors that are real and they're listening and they're not creating an idea. They didn't like get up and brush their teeth and look in the mirror and say, "Oh, that's how I'm going to play it." They know all their work. They show up there and they just let whatever happens happens. And that degree of realness and presence is my favorite type of acting. You know, and it suits my material very well. And in particular, it suited this material well. It's very, very, the chemistry of the three leads, and I've seen many, many iterations of the play. And most of them have really captured this, but not all of them. It just doesn't work if you don't have chemistry between the two of them. And you can't fake it, but what a lot of actors fail in is they're so concerned with how they look, their performance and all that, that they're not reacting or to the other person. Like, when you're in a scene with another character, you want something from them.
I can see that. You
don't want something from them. That's what human beings are. I mean, even us, we're talking right now. There's a tip for that. We both have a thing. It's like, I'm on a podcast. I'd love to get the word out. I want to answer your questions. I want you to be a good guest. You're like, so you want something, but if your goal in the scene is to just look good or hit certain, you know, monologue-y moments, it doesn't translate to the type of filmmaking I like. You know what I mean? So that's what those guys are. It's a selflessness. It's being so at ease with sitting in the character that they don't have to perform the character. They just are the character, and they're just in it in the moment, and they're loving and they're generous, and it's
and I think And I think what they capture the most is like, even when you guys are sitting around or passing a bong around or whatever, the mannerisms, you know what I mean? Like just, you know, just the way you guys interact with each other, you really feel like I'm watching three friends here. You know what I mean? I think that's what's best. And I do get what you say about, you know, sometimes like less is more. Sometimes it's what these guys don't say. Sometimes it's just their presence and their look or their mannerisms or their posture in a scene.
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't sit with your best buddies. It's effortless. You just are.
Right.
And you don't have to actively be someone's friend.
Right.
You know,
right.
you're there. And it's just, you know, you're there, you fuck with each other, you do it. So you need that sense of history. And, you know, I got to know Shay very quick. So this play was the movie was rehearsed like a play.
Yeah.
Table work for a month.
Yeah.
Going over every line and just stewing in the character and doing that. So by the time we showed up, I had already fallen in love with Shay.
Right.
And John, I knew. And it was, everybody loved each other. And by the way, look, dude, we shot in that shop for 3.5 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
And no trailers. And we're all just hanging out, smoking cigarettes. I didn't smoke until I smoked during the movie and it was so hard to get. But like you're just smoking, you're hanging out, you're eating at the end of the night, you're drinking a couple beers, but you're all there. And we all knew, the crew and everybody, we all had a very singular we knew it was sort of a magical moment in our lives to create this. You're not getting on a bus every 4 hours to go to a new location. You're not You're not bringing in people, this and that. You're getting ready at the beginning of the day, and we're shooting all day in the set.
Everybody's rowing in the same direction. Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole apparatus, you know, the whole visual look of the film, the way it was recorded, everything was designed to capture the performances.
Now, I know you had said the budget was very low and that you needed to keep it low, but was there ever an idea in your mind of anybody but you ever playing that lead role?
Yeah, I mean, me playing it had nothing to do with the budget. And to just clarify, it was not a low budget movie. It just was no higher than it needed to be.
Right.
The content, just because there is a delineation. Because initially I was at a much lower thing, and it would have been a lot more guerrilla style. So we found a comfortable time to have the time to do it, and let it marinate in it, but without breaking the bank. So, I mean, look, I had done the play in LA for a year, you know, off Broadway for 4 months or whatever it was. So I just knew it. And, you know, for me to be primarily a screenwriter and a playwright and having a family and being so busy and having to really not be able to do theater as much as I'd like to, and not doing it for years because of the family obligations and all that stuff.
Right.
And when I had this opportunity, I'm like, if I'm unplugging for 3 months to make this movie, I'm just gonna put all my chips in and look at it as an artistic endeavor and a challenge. And I think if I would have cast somebody else in there, I mean, I think I could have made it really work. I mean, those guys were great, but I think I would have felt like I made that decision out of fear.
Right.
And this was not a project to choose out of fear. Sometimes those happen, or there's a practicality to it. And I definitely don't need to be one of the main characters in everything I direct. I mean, that's insanity. But in this particular one, it felt like the only way to do it for me, to not regret it. So that's why I did.
Now, has there ever been any pushback as far as the actual themes and material itself? Because it certainly can be a little off-putting, some of the themes that you're dealing with in the movie. A lot of people, certainly, especially in this day and age where, you know, being politically correct seems to be paramount and not offending people seems to be paramount. Was there any worry about, you know, all of a sudden getting some blame that somebody might actually go out and perpetrate any of the stuff that was portrayed in this movie, or that themes were too violent, or that, you know, that anything ought to be, you know, off the table or off limits? Was there ever any concern about that?
Well, I mean, I think this particular material had the advantage of being battle tested for so long.
Yeah.
And, you know, in theater is typically very, very liberal, open mind, like progressive, sensitive.
Yes.
You know, it's not like a bunch of MAGA guys go to theater typically. So I knew if the material, like, by the way, I knew people who just looked at this thing as like a guy would enjoy the film and hopefully see some stuff.
Yeah.
But I never want to put something out there that ruins someone's day.
Right.
Or upsets them intentionally. But at the same time, I was like, I want to ask hard questions.
Sure.
And somebody here laughs and someone doesn't, I'm like, I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to create I don't think the movie is dishonest. And
Not
I don't
at
think
all.
it sugarcoats. So I'm not creating a false truth to push my own agenda. I was
Right.
rather like, I really think this. I made a movie, honestly, for the smartest woman in the room, like the women I
Yes.
grew up with.
Yep.
Who I like, in a weird way, the women I love
Love
are I can be the most sort of masculine around them in a way.
Right.
Like I can
Right.
be a guy.
Right.
I'm not trying to outdo it. It's not fake. It's not performative. It's just like they know what is truthful about me and real. And I was like, well, you know, man, when you have a woman that you love and you can talk heart to heart with, and that feminine quality is so beautiful to me in my whole life, to be like accepting and give you shit too, and counter that. You know what I mean? And
yes.
So I wanted to create that dialogue with an audience.
Yeah.
And in particular, I was like, look, I want women like my sisters who would see this and be like, oh, I get what you're saying.
Yes.
Because they have eyes. They know how the world works.
Yeah.
To create, a morally ambiguous, unfiltered world, it seems... I don't understand how someone could see this and not understand the point of it, or the sort of moral quandary and questions it asks.
Right. Me neither. Yeah, me neither. That's exactly what got me.
Some people do, for sure, in anything. But like, you can't do anything without, hurting some people's feelings in that. Right. I get more. I just, what bothers me more than anything is seeing people, pull their punches or make something fake because they want to get their back patted.
Right.
I felt like, man, the movie's unflinching and it's raw, but at the same time, it comes from a heart to me. Right. And the idea of it, like, as rough and fucked up as the movie may be, the intent of the movie is to make you question things and think about things which might lend to more good.
Right. I couldn't agree more. That's a very fair assessment. So is it hard for you? And even though you have gone back and gotten training as an actor, obviously sitting here talking to you and you discussing your family, and obviously you're a very, very mild-mannered, even-keel guy. Is it hard for you to tap into a role like that and play somebody that's extremely angry, that's extremely ready to go to the wall and really commit violent acts? I mean, do you find it hard to play that kind of role?
No, I mean, look, I think we all have those elements in you. I found actually playing it the opposite, that it was very cathartic.
Yeah.
To play that role, because, I mean, look, I struggled with a lot of anger issues my whole life. And really a lot of the anger was as a result of me not having the apparatus to express myself and be true to myself. So ironically, by writing and being an artist that explores characters like Frank, it allowed me to sort of come to terms with my own versions of that character within myself.
Right.
But no matter who you are, look, you all have that. I mean, you can be the most mild-mannered person in the world. If mosquito's on your arm, you swat it and you kill it. You have that impulse. Right. But I definitely think, my father has much more so when he was younger, an immense amount of rage, as did his dad.
Mine did too. Yeah. I think it's a generational thing. I mean, we're around the same age, I mean, I think it was just that. I think it was just kind of like a sign of the times. I was talking about this with my wife not that long ago, and it's just like, I don't even remember parents really being as hands-on back then. You know what I mean? Like, my dad was never out throwing a ball around with me or nothing like that. But I try to do that with my kids and my grandkids. But, I'm 49 years old. You're around that same age. It was just a different time. Generational differences.
It's a different time. And I think, yeah. So, but I found, I knew I could play the character very truthful, and I knew I could tap that anger, because it was so familiar to me, and being raised around it, and being raised with a lot of, alcoholism in the family, and like the dark aspects. And look, the beauty about the arts and being creative, as you know, this is you tap into those dark parts, and you kind of, it's cathartic. You set them free. Sure. In a way, for me to create something that's like utopic and bubbly and like all that, I mean, that can be really entertaining to watch, but I don't know if it always moves the needle the same way. You could have you could talk about the themes that Small Engine Repair deals with in a very hopeful, beautiful way. Absolutely. But you can also deal with it in this way, which, look, I do think that there's hope. I think the arc of the story leans towards characters making some very morally dubious questions, some bad decisions, but at the end of the day, it's really love and family that heals more than anything. And again, I'm like, other than pointing an arrow to it when certain scenes come up, I'm like, what else can I do? But not everybody gets that, because some people, unfortunately, And look, everyone's their own. You can't control it. Some people are just triggered by certain language,
Sure.
certain situations, and they just shut off. And I'm like, that's fine. Change the channel. Go do it.
Right.
But if you stick with it, you just have to kind of understand that. And
right.
The play, which obviously debuted 10 years ago, theater and I think cultural were at a different point.
Oh yeah.
People were a little more open to being offended and looking at it like, again, seeing characters who they just found interesting. They didn't have to be like.
Right.
So that's what this movie is. But I mean, I've found, again, we got really screwed in terms of all the film festivals being canceled because of we never had that situation of like seeing it with an audience, and we were supposed to premiere at South by Southwest. We never had that. Like have somebody like you sitting here and somebody sitting here who is like, all different walks of life having that communal experience, because the play is theater is a communal experience. Small engine repair is an exceptional communal experience, because you'll have people be like, I can't believe I'm laughing at this.
Right.
And
right.
Like we're all laughing together. They're making fun of me. No, they're making fun of you now. I mean, the play very much had that in its DNA, and the movie did. So that was heartbreaking to lose that.
Yeah.
Now, it's certainly found its way on. It's like on Hulu now, which I was like, oh, sucks. I wish it had a theatrical release, but it was during Delta, so it got creamed. But now that it's on Hulu, it's like bajillions of people are seeing it, and I'm like, that's awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah.
I didn't think that that would be such a beautiful outcome initially, because I had in my head that the film festival and the theatrical route was what you want to do with a gritty indie film. But
right.
You just got to shift with it and go with it and all that.
So obviously a lot of the focus of the movie is on yourself, John Bernthal, Shea Wiggum, but the real diamond in the rough, and she certainly got plenty of camera time and was a focal part of the movie, was the girl that played your daughter. Now, I believe her name is Sierra Bravo. Now, does she audition? Do you previously know her? Where do you find her? Because she really did a great job in playing. And I know this from experience being an East Coast person, and I think that's probably how you casted her as well. Smart mouth, sassy girl that pushes back, typical East Coast girl. Is that really who she is? And if not, where do you find her?
So some of the roles were offers and some of the roles were auditioned. That role was auditioned. Deb Aquila, who's like a huge casting director, you should just look her up. She's done everything. Good friend, and we saw the deepest bench of amazing actresses in that category.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible. And there was some amazing, it was an embarrassment of riches that you could have choose from. She just had a specific thing, and she's incredibly talented. Sierra as a person is a lot more thoughtful and artistic, but she just knew everything, and her experience and her, she got in a room with us. We were closed in a sweatshop.
Yeah.
Beating the shit out of each other for 3.5 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we go in the kind of person. And we shoot with her, and she sits there and she's just throwing it back with the best of them. You know what I mean? She's like,
that's nice.
Held it. And you needed a special person for that. And she was, and she's was amazing. And you couldn't have asked for a better actor than her in that. But she auditioned, she came back, she jumped through the hoops for us, because we had to match it. We had to know who was playing the mom and all that stuff. And it was, I can't believe how lucky we got with the cast.
Okay, so now let's get down to brass tacks. When do we see a David Lee Roth biopic?
I don't know, man. I don't have the life. Man, that'd probably be something cool to see. It's tricky, dude. The biopics are tricky because
they are.
The people that you love don't always tell the best stories. You know what I mean?
Right. That's true.
That's true. You love them. Like, I love AC/DC, and I'm always like, is there a movie there? And I'm like, I don't know. Probably not.
Have you been out to see the new Elvis movie yet? Any chance?
I haven't seen it.
No. Are you a fan?
Am I an Elvis fan?
Yeah.
I do like Elvis. I'm more of a Beatles guy, but I do like Elvis. Like a lot. His sort of selects. I love him. I like him. I listen to his shit on Christmas all the time. But.
It was pretty good, but obviously you got to be ready to go in and see a movie like that, because it was about 2 hours and 40 minutes. Yeah, so you got to be prepared to have your ass buried in one of those seats. Nowadays, though, they're making those movie seats very comfortable, though.
No, they do that out here. They have a lot of the recliner seats.
That's what we've got here. Yeah, the recliners, the big cup holders. Last time I went, I took my goddamn shoes off. I felt like I was in my living room.
Really?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. unbelievable experience now going to the movies. Listen, man, I really appreciate you carving out some time for me, man. I know we've been trying to make this work for a while.
No, man, I appreciate it. I got to say, like, so, you know, the note you sent at the beginning, it was just a really, really heartfelt, honest reaction. I mean, ultimately, that's why I made the movie is to hear from people. And,
well,
you know, I'm not super active on social media. So to me, it can be very distracting the way my mind is wired.
Agreed.
And like, if I hear people say they love the film, then my impetus is to dig deeper and inevitably find somebody who like hates it. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I just want to keep it pure. But your note to me was very pure, and it was just beautiful. I shared it with the cat, with Shay and John, and they were all super psyched.
I appreciate you saying that, and I've been telling the same thing to people that I'm trying to encourage to see the movie. I keep telling them, you know, because nowadays it seems like the attention span of people has just been reduced to shit. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to tell people, stay with it, even stick with it through the dialogue, because I am a dialogue guy. I love that in Quentin Tarantino movies. I like just hearing like long scenes where people just talk sometimes. You know what I mean? I don't need action. I don't need shootouts. I don't need cars blowing up or whatever. I love that kind of shit. I love that kind of shit. And I keep telling people, stay with it, because, you know, it'll be worth it in the end. The trade-off will be good. Because I don't know, if for 40, 50 minutes into the movie, when things really start to jump off.
It starts out as a genre of film, which I actually enjoy, which is the hangout movie.
Yes, absolutely.
You think you're watching a hangout movie, and then you realize there's something else going on.
Yeah.
But I just like hangout movies. Some of my favorite movies of all time are hangout movies.
Yeah,
and
I can just sit there.
The good news about that is, like, Small Engine Repair definitely has developed a following of people who just rewatch it.
Right.
It's
yeah.
like a skill thing.
I've been one of those people.
Once you know what's going to happen, you can kind of it's like comfort food in a way. In you know, following the different characters and what they say. And
like, I'm like one of those kind of people who could watch The Breakfast Club, and like, I love when they're like sitting upstairs in the library and they're just sitting around shooting the shit about their fucking their juvenile problems. You know, I mean, I love that, but you would think like, oh, there's really nothing happening here, you know. And I think sometimes I think you said it best earlier. That's when sometimes the most shit is happening, when you don't think as much is happening.
No, that's when you got to lean in. It's just like music, you know what I mean? We have become a little bit, I think, ADD through the pandemic, and just watching so much, swiping to the next thing, and
yes,
you need to marinate on it. And again, in a play, the lights go down. Like, especially when we first did this, you're not getting up out of your seat, no matter how offended or whatever you are, because you would have to walk across the stage to exit. Right. So you're stuck. Right. So we know we have you. We take our time, and we'll win you over by the end. With a movie, especially on streaming it's just very easy to hit pause or go to the next thing. So
and I would just say very happy, and without giving too much away, I would just say very happy to know that this movie somehow was able to slide in dick pics. I'm very happy about dick pics. Yeah, I'm very happy about that. Listen, man, I really appreciate it, John Pollono. Thank you so much, man.
All right, good luck to you, man. Keep in touch. Have a good one, buddy.
I will do that, man. I look forward to whatever you're doing next, man. Good luck with the Hulk Hogan biography thing. I hope that comes to fruition. You can see I'm wearing my Ultimate Warrior hat.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
I'm a big wrestling guy, so if you need me for an extra, or you need Chris Hemsworth to body slam me or anything, I'm there for you, buddy, okay?
I do. I'll keep that in mind, buddy.
Okay, thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, buddy. Thank you. Appreciate it. There he goes, John Pollono. If you haven't checked out, and I don't put a lot of movies up on pedestals. I like my movies like I like my music. I'm very much stuck in a time warp. I watch a lot of shit over and over again. But please, I implore my audience, go check out a movie called Small Engine Repair, starring that gentleman right there, who also wrote the play, directed the movie, starred in the movie. Also stars Shea Wiggum and John Bernthal, a guy who appears in everything. And also that guy right there, you heard it, is writing the screenplay for a possible Netflix biopic on the life of Hulk Hogan. You heard me ask him if I could play maybe Ric Flair or maybe Shawn Michaels, maybe Linda Hogan. I don't know if I have enough facial hair, but you know, we will see. But anyway, please, I implore you guys, go out there and check out whatever that guy does. Support whatever he does. That is John Pollono. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode of Pod Scum. And as always, I remind you guys to take it easy and keep it sleazy.